This is Dialog Anak Muda with me, Naila Huda. And this week, we witnessed leaders from across the region gathering in Kuala Lumpur for the 46th ASEAN Summit, discussing everything under the sun, from economics to trade, geopolitics, security, collaboration. But most importantly, they discussed on how to move forward together to chart a new vision for tomorrow. This week, they launched the KL Declaration on ASEAN, a vision document titled The ASEAN Community Vision 2045, How to Move Forward for the Next 2 Decades, a strategic direction for the region and for the political and economic bloc. And among others, there's more focus on pillars such as inclusivity, greater representation for youth, women, digital economies, green economies, as well as inclusivity and sustainability as well. But how does this vision document go beyond just rhetoric? Does it actually resonate with the youth across the region? And if given the choice, what do the youth of ASEAN actually want to see in the future of this region? And today, to help us unpack some of these key questions, we have not one, not two, but 4 panelists, 4 young leaders from across the region to help us answer some of these questions and perhaps imagine a future for ASEAN for the next 2 decades. In the studio, we have Vichitra Asogan, Vice President of Malaysian Hindu Youth Council, and we have Muhammad Khaizuran bin Muhammad Wardi, co-founder of Villaju Enterprise from Brunei. And joining us online, we have Natapon Momam Aunha Bundit, Visual Note Specialist of the ASEAN Development Bank Consultant from Thailand. And we have Yuyun Wahyuningrum, Executive Director of ASEAN Parliamentarians for Human Rights from Indonesia. Thank you so much for everyone joining us in the studio in Bukit Jalil as well as online.
Nice to be here.
Hi everyone, and I believe Natapon is actually in Kuala Lumpur right now, but on the bus, and we wish Natapon is here to join us. But I think we'd like to start with Vichitra, if that's okay. We want to just get a general idea, I guess a summary, a wrap-up of what we've seen with the 46th ASEAN Summit this year. Looking at some of the discussions, the achievements of the leaders gathering this year, did any of that resonate with you? What do you make with any of the news reports that we've seen from ASEAN this year?
Okay, so it definitely resonates us as well. Like, I think ASEAN was a very good opportunity, especially the ASEAN Youth Dialogue was actually a really great opportunity for us young leaders, me, Kai, even MM as well. So from there, like, we get to and I was really glad that I'm glad to represent Malaysia, to be in the interface as well. We get to meet all great leaders who are sharing this same thinking to bring ASEAN forward.
Is this your first time participating in ASEAN?
Yeah, definitely.
How was it like personally for you?
Personally, it was really great. Okay, so for everyone's thing, I'm actually in the senior youth considered, because Malaysia is moving towards Belia 30. So this was the peak of my career or my experience, I would say.
Yeah.
So the experience was really great, especially on the summit that happened yesterday. Yeah, that was really, really great.
No, it's very impressive to see so many young people involved. For Khaizuran yourself, is this your first time at ASEAN?
For an ASEAN Youth Dialogue, this is my first time. But for an ASEAN event, this is actually my second. So my first one was also in Kuala Lumpur. It was ASEAN Australian Youth Leader Forum, where youth from Australia and all around ASEAN comes to Kuala Lumpur and talk about the theme of the forum that time is Future Cities of 2050. So we talk about how urban cities around ASEAN and even Australia can go forward in being more inclusive and being more smart. So as this is my second time, representing my country, Brunei Darussalam, into the international stage, especially with this dialogue where I got to meet a lot of very great leaders like Vichitra, like MM, and it's an experience that I feel like I will not get anywhere else, and it's such a privilege to even talking to all of the delegates that were elected by their country to come and represent their country. Yeah.
You've had some experience with ASEAN before. If you were to compare to this year, what do you think makes this year a bit more different, a bit more special?
Right. I guess since this dialogue is in Kuala Lumpur, especially for Brunei, this Malaysia is our friend. We are neighbors. So it means a lot because geographically we are close. And then for me, I am a Malay, Melayu Brunei, if we call them in Brunei. So some of the issues in Malaysia does resonate also in my country. So it is it's a unique platform to actually discuss with some of the local delegates for Malaysia, not even just in West Malaysia, but also from East Malaysia, which is our friend in Sarawak in Sabah. Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about the ASEAN Community Vision 2045, our shared future. This is, charting a new path, a strategic direction for the next 2 decades for how the region wants to prepare for tomorrow, calling for enhanced institutional capacity, deeper regional cooperation, looking at some specific industries. I want to ask Yun, what do you think of this ASEAN Community Vision, and how do you yourself envision ASEAN for the next 2 decades?
First, I would like to comment on this vision. First, this is the first time that ASEAN took 20 years because before it 9 years, 10 years, and now it's 20 years. It's a risk because if you don't do anything on something, then you have to wait for 20 years. But as a document, it has been integrated. It include number of new and initiative ideas, such as green economies, digitalization, so it seems like ASEAN committed to work together toward these global challenges. But there are a number of things that are not included there. So for instance, how to protect the marginalized groups such as refugees is not included there. So it is still a question. So I would like to put here that this document is very good document. It gives us direction to the next 20 years toward the ASEAN that we would like to see. But at the same time, the document remain marginalizing some groups. Again, I mentioned about refugees. The protection of refugees is not included there. And the word democracy mentioned 3 times in the document without any action points. So in this point, ASEAN missed the opportunity of bringing the democratic promotion action into the document. So what would be the implication? It means by the next 20 years, we may not have initiative action toward the promotion of democracy. We may be at the same level as we are now in the next 20 years in 2045. So there are a number of things that is very forward, and they are still lag behind.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think
you want to add some points?
Yeah, I think I would add a point from Miss Yun. So, like she said, in the Asian Community 2045, they have not added the marginalized group in the statement. But however, during our Asian Youth Dialogue, where we actually have our youth statements, where we bring that all to the delegates, especially to all the 10 countries. So we did mention over there, like we would recommend if the policy should have vulnerable group, like we have generalized it to be vulnerable group instead of marginalized. So we do hope that they do add into the community vision soon. Yeah.
So it seems like on the youth dialogue level, there is greater focus on marginalized groups or vulnerable groups, as you mentioned.
Yes.
Do you think that maybe then there's maybe I'll ask this to you, Yun. Maybe do you think that there's a disconnect then between what youths of ASEAN are discussing officially as well in the youth dialogue forum, but it seems as though on the leadership level, on the actual official document, there's a bit of a disconnect, do you think?
I agree because I believe that youth group has been raising the issues very much on climate change. Some of the issues had been included, I saw, because number of contemporary words. I mentioned the contemporary word because we don't use it before, and now we use it today because of the COP discussion and so on and so forth. And I believe those words came from the advocacy from the youth. But this document has been discussed for more than 4 years.
Yeah.
So the task force had been discussing from one place to another, consulting different groups. Of course, they have to come up with the consensus among themselves. Some issues may sensitive for others. Usually at the end, they will go to a lower denominator to arrive at the consensus. So I support what the speakers earlier mentioned, that youth has been offering their views, their ideas, their suggestions, but remain not yet be in the document right now because the document is already adopted. But I
Yeah.
think now the problem is on implementation. How we can have a nuance from what youth has been envisioned to be included in the process of implementation of any action in the ASEAN Vision 2045.
Natapon, what do you think? What do you like and what do you think is missing from the ASEAN Community Vision 2045?
I do agree from Miss Yu that we do missing a lot of the action words that say, okay, what we are going to do next. That's what happened to when we document something and when we said like we are supporting, we are like empowering, but then maybe those action words, it's what we need it for. And also, just like Miss Wisita said, that we actually we actually were taught in the with heart in the dialogue about the wicked problem that we actually facing right now, and it's involved with something that is like about the marginalized group that cannot be accessed to other facilities, right, such as like educations or healthcare. That's why I guess like before we kind of like go into um like like to solve some problem, maybe we have to find the root cause and also kind of like help on that. And just like Miss Visitor said, in the UNICEF session, a lot of the groups that would like to present the problem, about 5 out of 7 groups, right, about the marginalized group, that we think that we need to fix this before we actually, just like I said, go to the action.
How do you think is the right way to move in trying to fill in this sort of disconnect, this gap between what the youths are discussing at the youth dialogue and what the actual the leaders, the highest leadership of ASEAN are discussing? How do you think is the best way to sort of create that connection?
Like
Chitra?
in my opinion, by right, because ASEAN Youth Dialogue is bringing all the youths from 10 countries, and now we are bringing in our observer who is Timor-Leste as well. They do they do came to this ASEAN Youth Dialogue as well. So while we are discussing on pain points of each and other ASEAN countries, we wish that the leaders would also have the time to also speak to us, like indirect, like they do have the dialogues together with us. So that way they do see what are the problems that the youths are actually raising and what are the solutions that the youths can come up with. Because according to like what Miss Yu Yun said, like they have already discussed it among the leaders themselves. So, but we are not sure if whether they have brought it to the youth, especially, and per se. Maybe, in my opinion, why the marginalized group matter was not up in the community, because all the pain points or all the vision that was in the Asian Community 2045 is what all Asian countries resonate. So in marginalized groups, like we do have our neighbor country Singapore, they do not really resonate to this marginalized group per se. Maybe you want to add on, Kai?
Yeah, what are your thoughts on the ASEAN Community Vision? Is there anything that you like, or if you envision for the next 2 decades, what do you think should be maybe top 2 or top 3 priorities that ASEAN should consider in their sort of strategic direction for these 20 years?
Yeah, so I believe hopefully, the youth statement that we come up recently, has been reviewed, has been taken into consideration, because I believe the points that we've made in the youth statement covers a lot of what the current youth all around ASEAN are trying to push forwards.
Yeah.
So if this statement, how I see it, if if we do not acknowledge the things that are mentioned in the youth statement, that we tirelessly try to come up and ensure that it resonates to all the stakeholders that are going to read this, it shows how much attention that we're given to the youth today, especially in ASEAN, and how much their voice actually matters, because as you said, this is the highest level of dialogues among youth in ASEAN.
Yeah. Now, I know we're talking about the next 2 decades, how we want to plan for the future, but I also want to reflect on the past, what actually has been achieved or not achieved. Maybe we'll get Yun's thoughts on this. If you want to reflect on the past, as you said, planning for the next 20 years is a bit of a risk, because in the past we've just had vision documents for 9 or 10 years. Looking to what has been achieved or what hasn't been achieved with ASEAN, how does that resonate with you, Yun? What is your impression? What does the ASEAN identity even mean to you, and what they've built for the past few decades, Yun?
I saw ASEAN has changed from time to time. The change has been quite slow, but it changed. ASEAN now, either ASEAN member states or ASEAN institutions gradually engage with people, with young people, with children, with communities. So this need to be improved. In the next 20 years, whatever adopted now in the ASEAN Vision 2045 still can be influenced and still can make impact to the life of the people in ASEAN region. But ASEAN member state and ASEAN as regional institution should engage, consult, and bring the young people's participation, because each of us, young people, civil society, the marginalized group, the vulnerable groups, they have something in their mind. And so I'm sure within 20 years, the member state, the drafters, would be very reluctant to set very rigid goals, because context change from time to time. So that is why this create a lot of opportunities to shape the methodology of doing the action, and also to shape the impact and the outcome of the implementing the action agreed in the ASEAN Vision 2045. But it required participation of people of ASEAN. It required the participation of young people. So this is the second chance for civil society and young people and other groups and stakeholders to be able to contribute the views that was not adopted, that was not included because of the mechanism of decision making in ASEAN, such as consensus. So so now the document is already adopted. Now the question is about implementation. This is the space in which we can offer our views from whatever we expert on, to the process of designing, implementing, also the monitoring and evaluating the action points included in ASEAN Vision 2045. But yes, ASEAN has changed from time to time. Before it was too stat-centric, but now still stat-centric, but little bit relaxed. in terms of engaging their own citizens in the region.
Natapon, what are your thoughts on this? Has there been better, stronger engagement with citizens, especially with young people?
Yes, I would like to back to the first question where you asked me if if I'm the first time joining the ASEAN community in like dialogue. So this is my first dialogue ever, but then before that I also joined three, four different programs. And I think that what I can see is that the collaboration is much more stronger this day. The thing that we can better this collaboration is that maybe not just only, we kind of like get to know each other, but also what's next after that. There are like some program that was trying to gather us together and then makes the project. For example, like ASEAN Foundation, where they have like the e-empowerment that gather all the youth ASEAN to do the project together. But how can we really sustain it? That is still a challenge. And I think that what ASEAN can do is that it's also the same thing that I also envision. Not just only we have the national Thailand Youth Council, but why not we have like the ASEAN Youth Council that is finally, like arranged for all of the ASEAN youth, and then we can create the platform that we can link those ASEAN youth together.
You guys seem to agree, and everyone seems to be on the same note when you're talking about execution, about implementation, holding leaders to account about whether what they're promising actually becomes reality or not, and greater representation or inclusion of youth voices. Vishitra, what do you think about this aspect of actually executing some of these visions, these goals that they have? At the end of the day, a lot of us just think it's rhetoric, right? It's all just maybe empty promises. Like, how do you want to make sure that this actually becomes reality? Like, how do you envision youth being or playing a more active role in there?
So for us to have youths to play more proactive roles, so over here in these past few days, we did only have about 80 to 100 delegates from all ASEAN countries. So we do not want youths to think that, okay, only these delegates are coming from the ASEAN countries who are actually responsible to play the role in moving forward and all. We want all the youths. So we want all the youths to know the opportunity is there for you to come out and speak up and to also bring up your actions towards it. So you don't throw all the burdens to us, but instead work together with us. So like we said, what said, having an Asian Youth Council would be actually really great. And to also add up on that, we also would want Asian leaders to also, ASEAN leaders especially, from all other countries, where we can see, I'm actually very impressed where Thailand has the actually youngest Prime Minister among all ASEAN countries, where she's only 38 and she's the only female. So we would want all ASEAN leaders who maybe provide the opportunity or give chances to the upcoming leaders to also bring this community vision a reality, per se.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, the opportunity is there, right?
Yeah.
You don't want other young people to look at you guys and feel like they're left out. It's just you guys that get to join these kind of dialogues, these forums. But I guess just to understand on a personal level, Kai, maybe you and among your friends, what is the ASEAN identity or the status to them? Does it actually mean anything to them? Is it meaningful, or do they just think it's, men in suits talking about business deals once a year? What does it actually mean to young people, to your friends maybe?
So, I'm gonna just briefly go through the local context when it comes to Brunei youth views in ASEAN. So especially the thing is with Bruneians, since we are very well, what do you say? The culture of ASEAN, especially with Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia, to an extent Philippines and Thailand, we can resonate some of the cultures of ASEAN. We in accepting and even from our youth statement we mentioned about cultural
Yes, cultural diversification.
Cultural diversification. So when it comes to acceptance part, I think for Bruneian youth, right, how they see ASEAN, they see this as a region that, you know, holds the pieces together. This region, this small region, who's trying their best to stand out into the global market. Yes. So I guess like I want to go back to actually when it comes to like voicing out, especially in a regional level, right, ASEAN level, where, you know, we wanted our youth to, you know, come to their respective council for their countries and voice out. But I think one of the main concerns when it comes to raising out youth, raising out their voices is what is the current mechanism that is provided? What is the current policy that are currently protecting the youth to actually voice out their concern? Voice out what do they feel like the current issues that is very important to be tackled, not just in the grassroots level, but also like ASEAN as a whole. That is something that I believe that needs to be worked on if we are moving forward to the future.
Yuyun, we're talking. Yes, Natapon, you want to add something?
Yes, I would like to add on that. Usually, when we go into the dialogue or like finish the summit, there would be the media, like summarizing all of the things, but in text. So me working as a visual note taker, I committed to present this into something visualized so that it could also go into other people more, especially from the young generation where they would love to see something like not just only the report, but something that they can also feel like they understand it deeply. So I guess media will play a big role in this, and I think youth can also step up in this as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. Yuyun, we're talking about greater youth representation and what it actually means to young people. What do you think? I mean, we're talking about this shared cultural identity, but we must also recognize that there is a difference, or we must distinguish between this Southeast Asian shared identity or an attempt to share a common identity, but we must distinguish that between the Southeast Asian region and ASEAN as ultimately a political economic bloc with political economic goals, right? Does that resonate with young people, Yuyun?
I'm not young anymore. But I think the way ASEAN now, as a region, as a regional organization, what I like Vichitra mentioned earlier, showing the young prime minister, female young prime minister, we need to check the statistic. How many young people in ASEAN? Maybe we are the region which has young people more. So we can say that ASEAN is supposed to be having the identity of being young because the population dominated by young people. But again, I do not know the statistic. But for Indonesia, we have a surplus of young people, and therefore there should be a different way of approaching this kind of situation. So young people has been calling for engagement, participation, to be listened of their ideas. And young people also reflect innovation and digital, because they are all digital savvy. So it is very important to provide any approaches or mechanisms that link to this digitalization. Incubators for innovation, for instance, on the area of human rights. There should be human rights protection against technology facilitated violence against both men and women. So ASEAN needs to think about this, because if the population majority are young people, then all approaches need to adjust to the young people's needs, interests, and also rights.
Yuyun, you mentioned some really interesting points there about these pillars or these issues that matter a lot to young people. Some of the same things that we're seeing in the community vision, climate change, green economies, digital economies, more inclusivity and representation. And these are issues that tend to resonate and, that young people are able to relate with or are more passionate about. But do you think that this is perhaps enough to foster greater unity among young people in ASEAN countries? Because when we're talking about ASEAN and at the highest level of negotiations and discussions with ASEAN leaders, there's this critical question or concern about unity, right? You're talking about the Myanmar crisis, the South China Sea dispute, the US-China trade wars, and trying to get unity across the board is it's not an easy task. It's difficult. But with young people, if we're going to envision the tomorrow, the future of ASEAN, what do you think it would take to unite youth in the region? Would it be these issues? Would it be a shared cultural identity? I mean, it's so diverse in ASEAN as well. I mean, perhaps that's our strength in diversity, right? But at the same time, it could probably make things a lot more complex as well. What do you think would take to unite everyone?
First, we should not misunderstood unity with uniformity, because young people also reflect differences, different ideas, different identities, different background and culture. So we can be united on principle and maybe on issues. So far, my engagement with young people, they are passionate about on right to work, decent work, education, innovation, digital, climate change. So these are the areas that capture a lot of attention and energy of young people. But we also see young people who are far away from all access to digitalization, those who are living maybe far from urban and so on and so forth. So the challenge is now is to recognize that young people, like other community, represent a different situation, different context, but they commonly aware and concerned about environment. Because climate change may be a little bit smaller than environment, but so many young people take efforts even without other adult ask them to do on the issue of environment. So this is one thing that make, in my observation, bring young people coming together. Another one is ability to express, whether it is opinion on written or verbally. So these areas create a lot of unity in terms of interest among young people. I remember during the election in Indonesia, for instance, when the one of the presidential candidate provided a space to speak, to be able to speak freely, uh, uh, critically on situation without being afraid of being arrested. That create unity among young people, that they can, because their views, young people's views, are quite different from the previous generation. And so this is and very often there are generation gaps between the current generation and the previous generation, and they create their own island. The island they can express freely about what it is in the mind, what is in the heart, what they want to do it independently. So there are areas in which, or themes that bring young people coming together. But the key is the freedom to be able to speak and express their opinion is a key to all process of uniting young people.
Yuyun, I guess you are right. You're not so young anymore because you are very wise. You're wise beyond your years. And I like what you said about diversity or unity does not necessarily equate uniformity. Natapon, what are your thoughts on this? What do you think would take for the ASEAN youth to create more unity or foster more unity?
I think we should continue doing the cultural exchange just like we already had and maybe more. But just just like also you focus on it too that once we join all this program, how can we really not just only pick this to be just only limited number of participation, but also share what we learn to others as well, because there might be some constraint with the languages and also like maybe like the opportunities for them to join this kind of program. I guess like us as a youth ASEAN, we like to share how it's like to collaborate with others and how we felt. And this kind of thing really make my friends who didn't join this program feel like, oh, so ASEAN as a youth, we can really harmonize each other, indeed, like work together. And I guess like motivation for further is that because just like I mentioned before, how can we really sustain this collaboration? Because there might be some different perspective in terms of like, for example, we would like to empowerment women, but it would be somehow hard to like those countries who are still yet in the masculinity culture. So yeah, there are some gap that we have to kind of like touch down in this a little bit. And also another one is that since a lot of incubation program is involved with the startup, so that's why we can sustain this kind of thing. Maybe how can we really have the ASEAN marketing in this as well? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
you
just
have
want
some
to add
thoughts.
something.
Yeah.
You know, I mentioned about how we trying to bring it back, you know, to our country, especially like something as this dialogue, right? What we having. I like this one quote where we stated that we want to think globally but act locally. So what it means is that, you know, for most of the delegates, not limited to just this dialogue, but even the past events and probably like the future exchange programs that's going to happen among ASEANs. How can we have this conversation with our ASEAN's brothers and sisters who have a very different background, different ideologies from each countries, and then having that different perspective, and in this context, a regional perspective from each of our countries, and then going back to our own country and see where we can like fill in the gaps of where you know, efforts that has to be made in the local context. So I believe this is something that needs to be worked on and needs to be practiced for, you know, future delegation of like youth around ASEAN. Yeah.
Vichitra, you have any thoughts on this? How to think global but act local? How do you imagine taking some of what you guys have discussed on a, you know, regional level, but trying to act locally and trying to sort of, I guess, share the good word of ASEAN amongst your peers, and how it can relate or how it can resonate better with the local context?
So for us in Malaysia, so for us in Malaysia, I feel like most youths actually like they do think that maybe ASEAN is just a political pathway, but then instead there are certain of us youths, we do not want to like venture into politics per se. There are some, like we can see, like all of them have different talents and different thoughts on what kind of pathway they want to do. So for me, all youths should consider that we do have a youth council already in Malaysia, and I'm already a part of it. There's already so many joint bodies that we actually can join in, and then like to, how to say, to foster or to work together kind of thing. But then some of the youths, nowadays youths, we can say, or maybe Gen Z youths, most of them will be like, okay, what do I gain through it? What is the token of appreciation that I'm going to get of it? What is the incentive that I'm going to get from it? So we ASEAN youths, like I think I can bravely say we actually don't, we do not really expect incentives, tokens. For us, this is a really great experience where money actually couldn't buy. So it's like once they actually join, then they would know. So we would want other youths to also feel that, okay, this is not just a mere political way, but rather than a platform for you to also come and voice out what are your pain points or what do you want the leaders to do for you, kind of thing.
I want to just, oh yes, Natapon, you want to add? Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I also just think that because I also do a lot of trainings, but the training could not really go to everyone, right? Um, but every time that when we go to the conference or anything, they would always mention something related from the UN said that, the World Economic Forum said that. But why not we just also include the ASEAN, youth chart to be in that as well? That like, okay, we according to the youth ASEAN chart, we would like to aim this and that, so that people would feel like, oh, they feel included more. So just like in the European Union, my friends really attach with the European Union just because it's all mentioned a lot often in their daily life. For us, I think ASEAN should be really in the daily communication now, so that we can act regionally and also proud about being ASEAN as well.
A center of reference per se.
Yeah. Yuyun, your thoughts on this when we're talking about greater ASEAN presence? It cannot come forced, right? It cannot be sort of a top-down model. If we're seeing, or if we're trying to compare with the EU, perhaps it's more relatable to the everyday, ordinary citizens because it relates to their transportation, it relates to their food. The food that they're buying in the supermarket is all being regulated by the EU. Their jobs and policies and laws surrounding their jobs are all protected or guarded by the EU. So it does have a lot of effect on their everyday lives. But with ASEAN, trying to force that kind of similar presence on the everyday folk is not the same, right? We have different mechanisms. So do you agree, Yuyun, that we should have a similar level or degree of presence in our lives? And if so, what are some mechanisms for ASEAN to I guess, inject itself and become more present in our lives, especially for young people?
I agree with Natapon just now. There is a huge gaps on how we can present ourselves, our thoughts, our opinion in the global discourse. We continue to hear this is how European think, this is how the African think, this is how North American thing, but we never come up with this is how we think as ASEAN. This is how we perceive things. So it require a lot of work from ASEAN side and ASEAN member states to instill this kind of idea of identity, and then contextualize, and people will be very proud of bringing this is how we are. We are, yes, we are different, but this is how we are. This is how we do things. So by presenting this, hoping that there will be different practices, but similar values and principles on number of like human rights, good governance, democracy, and so on and so forth. But the context and localization of ideas, practices from Southeast Asia seems missing. And again, this is the work of ASEAN Foundation, the ASEAN, also the ASEAN Social Cultural Pillar, and ASEAN Political Security and Economic Pillar, the all pillars. They should be able to reach out to young people more and more, because the current 20 years old young people becoming 40 young people in 2045. So, and those who are now 30 become 50. So this 20 years is long enough for ASEAN to be able to engage more young people and population in general, to instill the idea of being proud of bringing our perception, our perspective, our position, our views on global issues or local issues. I agree with the earlier opinions.
Yeah, I mean, with what Natapon and Yuyun are saying about having greater not just youth, but ASEAN youth specifically, representation on a global level, that does mirror a lot actually with what's happening on the higher level with ASEAN leaders themselves. With ASEAN, there's much greater prominence now on the global international level with what's happening between US and China. There's a lot more focus, especially with international media and whatnot. If we're looking at WEF in Davos even, people are talking about ASEAN and what they are planning for the future, right? We're, I think, collectively the 5th largest economy in the world. We've got great young population now. But when we're talking about being on an international level, talking about participating in international official dialogues and forums like WEF or the United Nations, some are in support of that. And then we're also seeing another group of young people like, for example, Greta Thunberg, becoming the face or icon of climate change for young people, right? She's sort of given up on WEF, on Geneva, on North America, and saying that what's being discussed at these global institutions or these forums are just rhetoric, it's just greenwashing, they're making empty promises, right? What are the risks of that if, say, these institutional dialogues and institutional organizations are making these promises to young people, saying they'll save the environment, they'll make sure you still have an earth to live on for the next few decades, but they're still using carbon, they're still burning forests. What is the risk of, I mean, that's just an example, we don't have to talk about the environment specifically, but what is the risk of not excluding, of ignoring young voices on an international level, and what could the world be missing out on when they're not when they're excluding voices from ASEAN specifically, Vijitra?
Like for me, Thailand is considered a young age country now. But however, Malaysia and Singapore, we are moving towards aging nation at the moment. Why? Because economically, maybe our strength is not there yet. Even though there's a lot of opportunities per se, there's opportunities in various industries. But having said that, currently, like for us, the law have said only basic salary at 1,007. Will the current youths are able to cope up with that? Because like for me, our parents did say 20 years back, for them, 900 ringgit as a salary, 1,002 as a salary, they're able to start a family, they're able to cope up with the economy, they're able to grow themselves. However, is it similar for us now? We can't say that because of all these rising prices of all the groceries especially. For them to think, for me to start a family, it's not feasible. For me to bring up the country, even if I wanted to, it's not possible. For that, we definitely need the young voices, which are currently left at the moment, to bring up all these kind of issues, and then for to have all the leaders as well to accept, okay, we are having a problem here. It's not enough for us to maintain the economy, even though if we want young people to come out and voice out or to bring difference to the country. Like for me, our economy is like quite draining at the moment. Even though like we do have a lot of digital economy, we have green economy, we have many Silicon Valley companies who are like coming up in the Penang or Klang as well. But then to survive or to just go through, I think like we still have a lot more to go.
Yeah, for you, it's more of an economic issue.
Yeah.
For Kai, what do you think? I mean, going back to the question of how, what the risks are of excluding youth voices, or I guess what do the youth of ASEAN have to offer to the rest of the world, not just for this region, but if you're saying, hey, the world should listen to us, what do you have to offer?
Yeah. So going back to the local context of Brunei again. So we are also facing the same issues of aging population, where older people, older generation have a longer lifespan, while younger generation are very inclined in birth rates and all that stuff. So I think the question that I propose to leaders when it comes to like focusing into like young people. Like for example, let's take a look into like the unemployment crisis that we're having. I believe it's an ASEAN
Yes, an
issue,
ASEAN
right?
problem.
So let's say we are not giving an opportunity for youth to be in the workplace, to upskill themselves, to be a decision maker in their community. Are we building a future where, a future where people are going to be incompetent? If we're not investing, our time and resources to the youth right now, for us to make decision, to make mistakes and all that, give us the proper resources and time to further develop ourselves. Are we just like focusing on the now, the current status quo, and just wait it all out and leave the youth who are going to be the next leader of the future just to be how they are like right now?
Yuyun, if we can go back to what we discussed about having greater representation, not just in ASEAN, but on an international level, right? You agreed with Natapon about being more included in these international dialogues, WEF and whatnot. What do you think the youths of ASEAN have to offer the world?
What youth in Southeast Asia need to offer? I think Southeast Asia has a lot of Greta Thunberg, but they are not exposed by media enough. If they are exposed by media in Southeast Asia, they are not picked up by the international media. So media has been pick and choose which one that they can present. Because I met with a young woman, young female from Bogor. She
Yeah.
has been doing a lot on reducing waste in her own village. And we saw a lot of young people in Bali cleaning the sea, for instance. So there's so many initiatives from young people in Southeast Asia. They are not just covered by media. They are not enough getting attention from media. And these people that ASEAN need to listen, because they are not only giving opinion, views, but they're doing it. They're the doer. And they come up with ideas, they come up with opinion, they come up with a suggestion because they have been doing something, not because reading many research on situation. No, but they are working on it. They're doing it, and they're working on small well, this is SMEs, business, on environment, on using the startups. So they already come up with the wisdom of the young people, because very often young wisdom belong to the old people. But they are, because they are practitioners, they are actors, they are the doers. They come up with these insights and wisdom by themselves, and this is something that ASEAN need. This is something what the world need to hear more, because it's so many. I cannot come up with something very um, tangible or straight to the point example. But in my capacity before as the ICHA representative of Indonesia, and now as the executive director of Parliamentarian for Human Rights, I saw so many good practices in different countries in Southeast Asia. And I was amazed with how, as young as their age, they already come up with this initiative. Unlike when I was very young, it was, we still very reading so many cartoon. But
Yeah.
young people now been well educated, well informed, and having more space compared with I was when I was younger. But so again, this is something that we need to highlight more. Media need to support their work, need to support their initiative and ideas, and present it as what you call it as Southeast Asian good practices.
Yeah. Great thoughts there, but we are coming towards the end of today's show. We have about just a minute left. If I can just have everyone think of, have this as a speed fire round session. If you can just have a sentence or two from you guys, your wish list for what you want to see from ASEAN and this shared future that we want together.
So definitely, I would want more youth to be included in. I want more youth to be more involved in ASEAN, and definitely I want more, more spotlights for ASEAN. Definitely, it should not be a one-time thing, only be aired only this week. We want ASEAN to be there time to time, so that everyone is refreshed towards, okay, ASEAN is there, there's ASEAN youth there, there's ASEAN member states there.
Okay, and you?
For me, I just wish in the future, how we see ASEAN, it's not just a region, it's an identity. We really, take the ASEAN value, not just, it's not just an organization. It's something that we practice into our day-to-day living.
And Yuyun, for you?
I want to see the establishment of ASEAN-wide youth innovation hubs and incubator program for young people in Southeast Asia.
I think we heard some of your main points there. Thank you so much, Natapon. Thank you, Yuyun. Hi, Vichitra. Thank you so much for joining us today on Dialog Anak Muda to share your thoughts on ASEAN and what we want for the future together. That's all on Dialog Anak Muda at this hour. With me, Naila Huda. We'll catch you another time.